All right, ready to dive deep. Today we're tackling the U.S. presidency.
Oh, and from a pretty unexpected angle.
You got that right. We're going through this 3-hour Joe Rogan interview with, well, Donald Trump.
I know, right? Rogan, he's got a knack for getting people to, really open up.
Totally. And before you think, politics, no thanks. This is different.
This isn't about sides.
Exactly. It's about, the raw, unfiltered experience. What's it actually like to be president?
The decisions, the pressures, stuff you won't find in a textbook.
Think about landing your dream job times a million.
Yeah, that feeling of, is this real life? But with presidential stakes.
Trump actually talked about this driving down Pennsylvania Avenue after inauguration.
I bet.
He was like, holy, I'm the president.
That sudden weight, every decision matters.
And he barely had time to process it.
Oh.
He mentions impeachment proceedings, right off the bat.
Wow, talk about pressure.
He was in survival mode from day one.
Constantly under attack.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder how that affects their choices.
Does governing take a backseat to just, staying afloat?
Right. Are you proactive or just reacting?
Yeah.
And then there's this.
What?
He had to make 10,000 appointments.
10,000? Seriously?
Yeah, and 0 prior government experience.
How do you even begin to?
Right. And even Trump admitted some were bad choices.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about neocons. Basically, a certain type of hawkish political thinker.
Ah, okay.
He felt some were disloyal, giving bad advice.
We could almost hear the regret when he talked about it.
Totally. And for anyone building a team, it's a huge lesson.
Yeah, even at the top, the right people matter.
Vetting, trust. Crucial no matter the level.
It's not just the decisions, it's who you have around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's always the media.
Oh, yeah, Trump and the press. Complicated, to say the least.
He's pretty open about it here, though, how his personality played into it.
That wild style he's known for.
He realizes it was a double-edged sword.
Got him tons of attention, but also tons of controversy.
Makes you think, how much does authenticity matter?
Right, his unfiltered stuff cut through all the political noise.
People saw it as genuine, it resonated.
He even mentions his comedic side, the Biden impression, that whole you'd be in jail thing.
He thinks those moments actually helped his popularity.
It's like people wanted something different, less rehearsed.
That's true in any leadership, right? People gravitate towards what feels real.
Even if it's rough around the edges.
Exactly. But is that enough on its own? Can authenticity cover for everything else?
Good question. Not just for presidents, but for anyone leading.
For sure. And speaking of things that'll raise eyebrows, tariffs.
Oh, boy. He's really into tariffs.
Like replace income tax altogether into tariffs.
I know, right? It sounds wild.
But he talks about President McKinley, the tariff king, back in the day.
So there is some historical context.
Yeah, there was this debate about what to do with the money tariffs brought in.
So it's not totally out of left field.
Exactly. And that's what's great about this. So we're looking past the surface.
Ideas that sound strange, maybe even crazy at first.
But we're challenging those assumptions, trying to see things from different angles.
And then he throws this curveball.
What's that?
He says the biggest threat isn't climate change.
It's
nuclear proliferation.
Whoa.
He's worried about idiots having that kind of power.
Makes sense, in a way.
And he brings up his uncle again, Dr. John Trump, the MIT nuclear guy.
Oh, right. The one who predicted those portable nukes.
Yeah, decades ago. Scary stuff.
It highlights how technology can have those unintended consequences.
It's not just about what we can do, but who's doing it and why.
True. And that applies to so much more than just nukes.
AI, genetic engineering, all those advancements come with ethical questions.
We can't just focus on progress. We need to make sure it's used for good.
All right, last one for this part. China.
Yes. Complicated relationship there.
Trump's view is kind of all over the place.
How so?
He respects their economic power, how smart their leaders are,
Okay.
but then he slams their environmental practices and trade policies.
It's that push and pull, competition, A&D cooperation. How do you deal with a rising superpower?
And this story. China shut down factories 200 miles around Beijing before his visit.
Really?
Just to make the air look cleaner.
Wow. Appearances can be deceiving for sure.
It's a reminder to always look deeper, question what you're seeing.
Trust but verify. Right. Especially when the stakes are so high.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Exactly. Giving you the tools to think critically.
So imagine you're president for a day.
Oh, this is a good one.
What's the one thing you'd change?
What surprised you most about what we've uncovered so far? Think about those.
We'll be back with part 2 to dive even deeper.
I'm ready when you are.
Back again for more on the Trump presidency, still picking apart this Rogan interview.
It's funny, that word survival keeps coming to mind.
Yeah, he mentions it a lot, doesn't he?
Like it was the focus, even more than actually governing.
It really highlights the whole pressure cooker environment we were talking about.
Hard to lead when you're constantly in defense mode, right? Exactly. And the weight of those decisions, it's got to be immense.
Makes you think, do we, contribute to that as a society?
Oh, interesting. How so?
All the scrutiny, the constant attacks. Does that force leaders into that survival mindset?
Instead of focusing on the bigger picture.
Right. And then on a different note, Trump talking about the environment.
Ah,
Not climate change specifically, but his love for clean air and water.
huh. I didn't expect that.
It caught me off guard too. He sounded pretty passionate about it, actually.
It goes to show, even on divisive topics, there can be common ground.
He even said the U.S. has the cleanest air and water in the world.
Well, that might be debatable.
Yeah, bit of a stretch maybe, but it's on his radar at least.
Which is important. Because regardless of your stance, environmental protection is crucial.
No doubt about that. But now, on climate change specifically.
Let me guess. Different story.
Let's just say Trump has a unique perspective.
Oh, what?
He thinks nuclear proliferation is a way bigger threat than climate change.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's more worried about, idiots having their finger on the button.
And he brought up his uncle again. Dr. John Trump, the nuclear physicist.
The one who predicted portable nukes.
Yep, back in the day.
Yeah.
Kind of chills you to the bone, right?
And it loops back to what we said earlier about technology.
About.
Unintended consequences, we got to be careful about what we create.
It's a tightrope walk. Innovation versus, potential disaster.
So, nuclear threats, yeah. But on climate change itself.
Where does he land?
He's skeptical, to put it mildly. Thinks it's overblown, not really a human-caused thing.
He even uses global warming, almost sarcastically.
Like he doesn't take it seriously at all.
Now, to be clear, most scientists disagree with that.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's important to see where he's coming from.
Go on.
He frames it as an economic issue, worried about hurting American jobs and businesses.
So less about denying science, more about economic priorities.
Exactly. He says China and India aren't doing enough, so why should the U.S. take the hit?
Complicated issue, for sure. No easy answers.
And it's one that needs, open and honest discussion.
Totally. Even when we disagree, understanding different perspectives is key.
Okay, let's switch gears. Something lighter, maybe?
Maybe.
Trump's love for McDonald's? Remember that campaign event he held at one?
Yeah, I remember that. Seemed odd.
There was a strategy there, though.
Oh.
He wanted to contrast himself with his opponent, who he said never had a real job.
See.
Playing up the man of the people image. Big Macs and fries, just like everyone else.
That authenticity angle again, right? Connecting with voters on a personal level.
Exactly. And for some people, it worked. They liked that he was relatable.
It's crazy how something like fast food can become a political statement.
The power of symbolism, right?
Yeah.
Everyday stuff taking on a whole new meaning.
For sure. So, from burgers to something a bit more serious.
The economy.
Right, one of his big talking points.
He's proud of his record there. The tax cuts, deregulation.
Claims it led to record low unemployment, booming stock market.
And he even says he was on track to pay down the national debt.
Before.
COVID. Threw a wrench in everything, he says.
Makes sense.
He argues that without the pandemic, the economy would be even stronger now.
Tough to prove either way, of course. But it highlights how external events matter.
He even told this story about meeting with his pollsters.
Oh, yeah.
They told him even George Washington and Abraham Lincoln couldn't beat him.
Because of
his economic record. Classic Trump, right? That confidence, the exaggeration.
Whether you love him or hate him, he knows how to grab attention.
So, lots of talk about successes, but what about the not-so-successful stuff?
Right. Got to look at both sides.
His handling of COVID, for example. A lot of criticism there.
Downplaying the threat early on, promoting unproven treatments.
Clashing with health officials, resisting lockdowns and masks.
He argued those measures would hurt the economy more than the virus itself.
Tough call looking back. Hindsight and all that.
Definitely one of the most controversial parts of his presidency.
And it's still debated today, but for our purposes, it's about understanding his perspective.
So factors that went into those decisions, learning from the past, right?
Exactly. All right, ready for the final part of this deep dive?
Let's do it.
All right, diving back into Trump world, one thing that's been a constant theme in this Rogan interview is...
What's that?
Trump as the outsider. Like, he's battling the whole Washington system.
That deep skate he always talks about.
Exactly. It feels like he's constantly fighting against the establishment.
And that resonates with a lot of people.
Totally. People who are fed up with how politics works, it definitely influences his leadership style, too.
How so?
He's all about action, getting things done, doesn't care much for rules or, like, conventional wisdom.
Give me an example.
His approach to ISIS. He talks about this meeting with military commanders.
Okay.
Basically told them to scrap the plans, figure out the quickest way to defeat ISIS, no matter what.
Wow.
He claims he gave them total freedom, cut through all the red tape,
They could.
crush ISIS faster than anyone thought possible.
Old move.
Right. It's debatable how much of that is true.
Sure.
But it shows his mindset. Decisive action, trusting his gut over the experts.
He's a risk taker, that's for sure.
Love him or hate him, you can't deny that. Okay, ready for a crazy story?
Hit me.
Trump's flying into a war zone. The landing strip is completely dark.
No lights.
Nothing. No guidance system, zero visibility.
Right.
He said it was one of the most intense moments of his life.
I bet.
And then he compares it to how Biden would have reacted.
Oh boy, here we go.
Says Biden would have taken a nap and left without talking to anyone.
Classic Trump.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? It reveals something about him.
Like what?
He thrives on that kind of pressure. The adrenaline, the feeling of control amidst chaos.
He's always felt like he has something to prove, right?
The outsider fighting his way to the top. It's a fascinating psychological aspect, I think.
Makes you wonder what kind of personality is drawn to power, doesn't it?
Do you need that risk tolerance, that thrill-seeking side, to be an effective leader?
Something to think about. But we can't talk about Trump without talking about this.
The 2020 election.
Right.
His claims that it was stolen, rigged, all that.
Dangerous territory.
He still maintains he won, despite all the evidence to the contrary.
Important to point out, those claims have been debunked over and over.
By election officials, courts, there's just no proof.
Right. He talks about irregularities, mail-in ballots, voting machines.
But never any concrete evidence.
And that's what's so worrying. It undermines trust in democracy itself.
Without any basis in reality.
He even suggests judges were too scared to overturn the results.
Like there's this massive conspiracy to silence him.
This kind of rhetoric is incredibly harmful. It erodes faith in our institutions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
It's been quite a ride.
Trump's presidency, it's a complicated legacy. Successes, failures, controversies.
And an impact that's still felt today.
We've explored a lot. His leadership, his policies, his personality.
The good, the bad, the just plain weird.
And that's what we aim for with these deep dives.
It's not about taking sides.
It's about understanding, seeing things from different angles, challenging our own views.
thinking critically, asking questions.
So, as you reflect on this deep dive, what surprised you?
What made you think? What lessons can we take away from this wild ride?
Keep those questions in mind as you learn and explore.
And thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, stay curious.